I went through a bunch of TV shows that were canceled before one episode and put them all into an iceberg chart with the most commonly known ones at the top, and the farther down we go on the iceberg, the more obscure and strange things get. Let's dive in. This was the most expensive poop in TV history. NBC created the ultimate shit show, Ultimate Slip and Slide, a reality competition adapted from the classic backyard water slide, which had contestants compete in challenges on gigantic, slippery slides. The series was primed for an important post-2021 Olympics time slot, and production was almost wrapped when, hold on to your butts, there's a Giardia outbreak. Up to 40 crew members fell violently ill, with reports of awful, explosive diarrhea that left people collapsing on set and being forced to run into porta potties. Production was shut down after they had been shooting for 7 weeks and only had 5 days left. I'll use this water slide diagram here to represent how close they were to finishing when they slid into diarrhea disaster. Universal said they would figure out how to finish production, but a lot of the original crew didn't want to return, blaming production for not ensuring that the water on set was clean. If you're aiming to make a real-life water park, how are you surprised that someone pooped in the pool? That is water park tradition, baby. I say own it, maybe even double down on it. Include this in the marketing. It'll add to the stakes of the show. Even crazier, one of the contestants went on Reddit to spill the tea and said the show was unpaid and they collected different interview outfits from us that were never returned after the show was canceled. So they made everybody poop themselves and stole their clothes. They continued by saying, I was not affected by Giardia, but I remember being freaked out by the set food after I found a little worm in my fruit cup. No clips or photos of the show have been made available to the public, and in the end, Ultimate Slip and Slide was the ultimate test of sphincter control, only to be dumped by NBC at an $18 million loss. 2014 was an interesting year for AMC, with Breaking Bad ending in 2013 and Mad Men set to wrap up in 2015. The network was looking for a new identity. Do they hope to hit on another pair of generational scripted series or go in a new direction? What better show for their flagship dramas to pass the torch to than Celebrity Bowling? They had already tested the waters of unscripted shows with Comic Book Men and arm wrestling reality show Game of Arms, and the original Celebrity Bowling series ran for 8 seasons in the 70s, so why not try a revival? It's way more casual and lighthearted than cooking meth, and way cheaper to produce too. All-Star Celebrity Bowling was hosted by Chris Hardwick, who also happened to be incredible at bowling. His dad was Hall of Fame bowler Billy the Magician Hardwick, so he basically was born to host this show. Hardwick took full advantage of the opportunity to absolutely dunk on celebrity teams like Team Conan, Team Breaking Bad, and WWE superstars. Around 20 episodes were ready to roll for TV, but just 5 months after the show was announced, AMC's competitor USA Network announced a pivot away from half-hour scripted comedies, and that same day, AMC announced that they'd be pulling away from unscripted programming. Sounds like a you stay in that lane, we'll stay in this lane kind of deal. So they chose to cancel several of their unscripted programs, including All-Star Celebrity Bowling, which hadn't even made it to air yet. It was released on the internet instead, and many episodes can be found on YouTube today. The end of this show was only the beginning of its run. Ben Affleck and Matt Damon created The Runner in 2001 as a nationwide manhunt reality show. One runner would compete for up to $1 million by completing a series of cross-country missions, all while being pursued by 3 agents attempting to capture them. The Runner was pretty ahead of its time, allowing potential contestants to apply online to either be runners or agents, and viewers at home could win a share of the cash prize by tracking the runner's location online and sharing clues. ABC picked up the series, and it was set to air in late 2001. But after the September 11th attacks, the network felt it was too soon for America to go along with the concept of a fictional fugitive evading capture. The series was canceled before it ever aired, but Affleck and Damon never gave up on the idea. 15 years later, The Runner would find a home on Verizon's mobile streaming service Go90. Hosted by Matt Pat, the show kicked off in July 2016, with 3 episodes airing live every day for a month. The show was ambitious in scale alone, but add in the live television aspect and production issues were doomed to happen. The tight editing schedule forced on-location film crews to occasionally resort to filming on their phones. The Runner was meant to remain faceless and nameless so that the chase teams couldn't use their identity to find them, but on day 11, the Runner's cover was blown when their face accidentally appeared unblurred for a frame in one episode. The first 2 runners were caught in the first 16 days, and on the final day, the last last runner was captured by mistake live on the first episode of the 3-part finale. So the plan for the rest of the finale had to be scrapped and improvised in real time. Those last 2 parts of the finale are now completely lost, and the files were probably tossed after Go90 closed down in 2018. There's been a wave of millennial kids show revivals like Fuller House, iCarly, Raven's Home. One that almost joined that list was Lizzie McGuire. The original Disney show starring Hilary Duff as a middle school girl navigating life as a teenager produced 75 episodes and a feature film in 2003. In 2018, Hilary Duff hinted at conversations about a revival, and the following year, Disney said a Lizzie McGuire revival is officially going down. All the stars had aligned. The original creator, Terry Minsky, back as showrunner, Hilary Duff back in the lead role as Lizzie, navigating life now as a 30-year-old. Their plan was for the sequel series to dive into more mature storylines to reflect Lizzie's age. She was going to move back to LA, she was going to reconnect with old friends and her animated alter ego, and in episode 3, she was going to sleep with her childhood crush. That was when Disney said, do you know where you are right now? This is the Disney Channel. We don't do sex here. Minsky and Duff argued that Lizzie is a grown-up now, and her sexual escapades should be included in the show. Disney said, la la la, my virgin ears can't hear you. So Minsky left the show, and production went into an indefinite hiatus. Hilary Duff tried to reason with Disney, posting on social media her suggestion of moving the series to Hulu so they could work without a PG rating. It was no dice for Disney, and in a post almost exactly 2 years after talks about the revival began, Duff announced that Lizzie McGuire was officially canceled. An Americanized IT crowd was an error that NBC could not fix. When new NBC chief Ben Silverman took the reins of the network, he found his bread and butter developing adaptations of British comedy series, especially after The Office became a massive hit. Next on the list was going to be remaking the cult classic The IT Crowd for American audiences. The British sitcom followed IT department staff members with 0 social skills and their manager with 0 tech skills. For the American version, Richard Ayoade would reprise his role as Moss alongside Joel McHale and Jessica St. Clair. Although his name was attached as an executive producer, the original creator of the show, Graham Linehan, said he was not involved with the US version in any way and only found out about it on the internet. NBC was quick to hype the show, even though only the pilot had been filmed and a couple scripts were written. But when Silverman finally watched the pilot, he did not like what he saw, and NBC decided not to move forward. Then in 2014, NBC gave it another go, bringing on Scrubs creator Bill Lawrence this time to remake The IT Crowd. That one also did not pan out. Take 3, NBC confirmed another try at an IT Crowd remake in 2018, this time with Linehan actually involved. But as of 2014, the American IT Crowd remains error 404 not found. Hot take, I think the most canceled person of all time is Roseanne Barr. In 1997, her #1 sitcom was canceled. In 2000, her daytime talk show was canceled. And by 2003, Roseanne was ready for a major comeback, willing to make any kind of show to get back in the limelight. So she worked out a deal with ABC Family to create her own white trash cooking show called Domestic Goddess. And to make things more complicated, while creating this show, they'd simultaneously film another show about the making of that show. The companion reality series, The Real Roseanne Show, documented the chaotic process of her and her family trying to make Domestic Goddess. The whole time she has a bad attitude and her producers have bad ideas, like stealing from vendors at a farmer's market as a joke. She hired an executive producer who saw the cooking show being, and I swear to God this is a direct quote, about war and child abuse and racism and stuff like that. I really have no idea what he meant by this. And Roseanne is obsessed with firing people. But what did the cooking show in was Roseanne needing an emergency hysterectomy. This unexpected surgery threw their whole schedule out of whack, leaving reshoots impossible before the premiere date, and Roseanne declared the show unfit for broadcast. With that, Domestic Goddess was canceled before 1 episode aired, and The Real Roseanne Show, which just had its 2-episode premiere night, was canceled the next day too, giving Roseanne Barr the honor of having 2 TV shows get canceled in 2 days. And with that, her comeback was canceled too. Until 2018, that is, when her classic sitcom Roseanne was revived, only for her to then reveal herself to be a racist conspiracy theorist on Twitter and get that show canceled too. Then in 2022, she released a new Fox Nation comedy special titled Cancel This. Roseanne, they probably did. Can a sumo wrestler win a tug of war against an orangutan? In 2003, Fox's Man vs. Beast gave us a real deal animal versus human Olympics. When reality TV producer Mike Darnell was first pitched the idea, he said, "That's so wrong, we have to do it." And what they created was as surreal as it sounds. 44 little people in a plane pulling contest with an elephant, a gold medal sprinter running a 100-meter race against a giraffe and zebra, champion hot dog eater Kobayashi duking it out with a Kodiak bear, a sumo wrestler in a tug of war with an orangutan, and a US Navy SEAL racing through an obstacle course against a chimpanzee. The SEAL won and called his opponent a wannabe human. Yeah, dunk on that chimp, dude. One YouTube commenter wrote, "Something tells me this type of TV show wouldn't be allowed today." Buddy, it was barely allowed 20 years ago. In fact, the UK saw this TV special and said, "We gotta try this out too." They filmed 6 episodes of their version of Man vs. Beast, complete with new matchups, like a human facing an alligator in a staring contest. But more than a dozen animal rights groups were quick to condemn the series, saying it will promote the captivity and exploitation of animals in the name of entertainment. Although ITV did shelve the series, they claimed it had nothing to do with backlash and was due to a scheduling error and that they'd air it later. That day would never come. In Nickelodeon's first few years, the channel was built on reruns from old kids shows. By 1988, they were ready to start creating their own originals. Who better to hire for the task than Ralph Bakshi, a renowned filmmaker behind animated features like Wizards, The Lord of the Rings, and the first X-rated animated film Fritz the Cat. Bakshi pitched an idea he'd been sitting on since high school about a magical city where thrown-out toys come to life, which would later become the zany urban world of Tattertown. Nickelodeon was all in on Bakshi's project and greenlit 39 episodes. But before Tattertown's grand opening, Bakshi got into some hot water when another show of his, Mighty Mouse: The New Adventures, was accused of depicting a character snorting cocaine. Bakshi denied it, but the controversy spooked Nickelodeon, and they abandoned Tattertown before its premiere. Nickelodeon would end up repurposing the Tattertown pilot into a Christmas special, Christmas in Tattertown, which aired during the holidays for a few years and remains the only episode available to the public. Ralph supposedly mentioned in a 2007 interview on his website that he plans to release all 39 episodes on DVD, but I couldn't track down this interview and the DVD release has still yet to happen. Maybe one day we'll find Tattertown hidden somewhere within Tattertown itself. One thing I'm ready to cancel in my life is ordering takeout all the time, man. It's overpriced, it takes forever, and when it finally gets here, the food's usually cold. Now I'm all about Factor, the sponsor of today's video. With Factor, I get chef-crafted, restaurant-quality meals delivered right to my door. It's way more affordable, and I'm not waiting an hour to eat. Their meals are ready in just 2 minutes. The meals are fresh, never frozen, taste great, and completely eliminate any of the hassle of prepping, cooking, and cleaning up for dinner. It just puts having a healthy lifestyle on easy mode when I can lean on these nutritious, ready-to-eat meals that I genuinely enjoy, like their cottage pie and black pepper and sage pork chops. Factor is now owned by HelloFresh, so I love to switch between the brands depending on if I want to cook or have my meals made in advance, and now you can enjoy both brands at a discount with me. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50Engelman to get 50% off and free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50Engelman at factor75.com to get 50% off and free shipping on your first box. This secret plan almost outsmarted a dictatorship. In the 1960s, Brazilian playwright Dias Gomes created a political satire stage play called Hero's Cradle. But before its premiere, the military dictatorship ruling Brazil at the time shut his show down. It was a pretty regular thing for works of art the regime deemed immoral. But Gomes wasn't about to let his story go quietly. So he developed a plan. He would secretly repackage his banned play into a telenovela with just enough minor tweaks that it would hopefully go unnoticed by the federal censorship. The story revolved around a hero, Roque Santero, who had supposedly died in a fight. His legend brought the local community lots of tourism, and it was a huge boon for the economy. But as it turns out, just when the town was making a fortune off of his myth, Roque reappears very much not dead. Chaos ensues involving political drama, love triangles, werewolves, soap opera gold. With 30 episodes filmed, 20 more written, and promotional material already everywhere, the show was ready to become Brazil's next TV sensation. Gomez's plan had worked, they were just hours from the premiere, and it was time to celebrate. In a private phone call, he bragged about outsmarting the military dictatorship, calling the telenovela his dirty little secret to get his previously banned play on air, laughing about how the federal censorship were too stupid, they wouldn't notice. Little did he know his phone had been wiretapped. The federal censorship heard everything, and just hours before the show was set to air, Roque Santiro was banned from television. The cancellation sparked protests from dozens of artists who even wrote a letter to the then president to try and save the show, but no can do on account of materials containing offenses to morals, order, and good customs, as well as mockery of the church. Gomez's plan was foiled, but only for about 10 years, because in 1985, Brazil's new republic permitted the show to air. They recast a few characters, and it ran for over 200 episodes, with the finale being watched by basically every single person in the country and becoming arguably the most successful TV show in Brazilian history. Pretty crazy how this story of a hero's death, then epic return, ended up mimicking the fate of the show itself, dying only to make an even more triumphant comeback. The Garbage Pail Kids animated series was based on the popular trading cards, which had already caused a stir in the 80s by parodying the popular Cabbage Patch Kids dolls with grotesque, gross-out characters. It had sold over 1 billion cards, but despite its popularity, Garbage Pail Kids were getting banned left and right. Banned from schools, banned from Mexico, banned from Australia, and it was about to get banned from TV too. They got a sign of things to come when a live-action Garbage Pail Kids feature film flopped real hard in the box office, and it's now considered one of the worst movies of all time. Later on in 1987, CBS was gearing up to launch the Garbage Pail Kids cartoon, but they were about to learn just how angry parents could get. The president of Action for Children's Television said it was outrageous to use handicapping conditions for humor in children's programming. Founding member of the National Coalition of Television Violence and convicted sex offender Thomas Radecki called the show sadistic. And it was Reverend Donald Wildman from the Christian Leaders for Responsible Television who went straight for the jugular, the show's advertisers. According to him, pressuring advertisers to pull their support was a huge factor in CBS's last-minute decision to cancel the show. Around 30% of CBS affiliates protested airing the show too, some flat out refusing to broadcast it, even before the cancellation was announced. Almost 20 years later, all 13 episodes of the Garbage Pail Kids series were released on DVD. The opening of the first episode has a news anchor complaining about how gross the show is, saying how shocked she is that they let it air on TV. A self-fulfilling prophecy. As of today, a new Garbage Pail Kids animated series has been in development since 2021 with HBO Max and filmmaker David Gordon Green. Seriously Dude, I'm Gay had two straight men competing to see who could convincingly live as a gay man. They had to convince friends and family of their newfound sexual orientation, and at the end of the week, a panel of gay men would judge them, with the most convincing gay man winning $50,000. The reality show was set to premiere on Fox in June 2004 with a 2-hour special. But before it aired, Fox reached out to the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation to double check that their new show wouldn't negatively impact the LGBT community, and it's a good thing they did. After a private screening of the first episode, GLAAD's entertainment media director said it wasn't that we could suggest adjustments, the whole thing was problematic, describing it as an exercise in systemic humiliation. Within just hours after this meeting, Fox pulled the plug on the show. But many of the people who worked on the show were LGBT themselves and believed the show could have done some good to address homophobia in the country. One contestant even said the experience helped him realize that there is no way to act gay, you are just your normal self. Drag queen Jackie Beat, who worked as a mentor on the show, said, "What they don't see is that it's obviously poking fun at the straight dudes, but also seemed to knock the show's quality," adding, "If any good can come from this, it is that we're getting to the point where maybe gay and shocking isn't good enough. First, you've got to be good." Let me try to play both sides for a sec. I think I get what the folks working on the show are saying. Getting homophobes to step into the shoes of the people they fear or misunderstand, role-playing like this can help change perspectives. But the fact that the people behind the show kept choosing the show's defense as the whole thing is a joke, is that not the same defense that bullies use to minimize their prejudice? GLAAD was concerned if people view it in poor taste, this could put gay individuals in harm's way. This wasn't GLAAD censuring Fox. They praised Fox for consulting them and listening to what they had to say. So if you're angry about GLAAD's hypervigilance to protect the gay community, consider where America was at in 2004, and maybe direct your anger at what they were trying to protect gay people from. In an alternate universe somewhere out there, Jersey Shore was canceled before any episodes aired, and instead, the world would have had Bridge and Tunnel, which the LA Times calls the greatest show you've never seen. Bridge and Tunnel followed two Staten Island sisters, Brianna and Gabriella. Brianna originally applied to put her boyfriend on VH1's Tool Academy. The casting director saw potential and passed her along to an MTV producer who wanted to make a show about Brianna and her circle of friends and family. 12 episodes were filmed of working class kids struggling to get off Staten Island and to to make it in Manhattan. When it was sold to MTV, Brianna got the call while at work that you can quit your job. But hold your horses there, because we got a situation. We got the situation. Both Jersey Shore and Bridge and Tunnel were bought by MTV and set to air around the same time. Since the shows were pretty similar, MTV decided to air the lower budget Jersey Shore first and follow it up with Bridge and Tunnel later in the year. We all know what happens next. Jersey Shore's surprise popularity hits the stratosphere. MTV realizes they've captured lightning in a bottle. They double down on more of that Guido hijinks and tell Bridge and Tunnel that the cabs are here.
Cabs are here! Cabs are here! Cabs are here!
According to a Village Voice article, Gabriella had a feeling their show would never air after a psychic told her so. I was rattled by this incredibly brief mention with no follow-up, so I reached out to Gabriella and said, I gotta know more about this psychic thing. She told me she doesn't remember, but it's something she would say, and she said she did see a psychic that said they would be famous but never take it all the way, and that this was before the show even was a thing. Jersey Shore would become the pop culture phenomenon that it was, with Snooki making $100 grand an episode, and while Bridge and Tunnel never would air, the cast was paid a couple grand for each of their 12 unaired episodes. Today, the sisters operate a real estate business, and to those who know, they are considered the OG JWoww and Snooki. Put that in your LinkedIn profile. Jay Williams is the father of 34 kids with 17 different women. He set out to rebuild his life and relationships, turning to life coach Iyanla Vanzant on her show Iyanla Fix My Life on the Oprah Winfrey Network. Jay and his family became one of the show's most talked about storylines. His mega fix spanned 3 episodes with 3 follow-up reunion episodes. Iyanla took on the monumental task of forcing Jay to confront his choices head-on. It gets heavy, digging into the root causes of Jay's behavior, growing up with his own experiences of deep abandonment. By now, many of Jay's kids are old enough to decide if they want a relationship with him at all. One mother even shared on the show that she had no idea Jay had other children until Iyanla's team called her for the series. Iyanla didn't hold back, telling Jay that she would blow up his life so he could rebuild these relationships with his kids on their own terms. It's clearly an emotional experience for everyone. It's also really funny at times, but never at the expense of the women or the kids. It's just because Iyanla herself is hilarious. Iyanla loves using dolls to visualize how many kids Jay has.
Excuse me, that's your baby. You can't put that baby down. No booty calls. You gotta write that down. You let a penis penetrate your friendship. Penis!
Even with 6 episodes dedicated to this story, the world wanted more, and OWN greenlit a new series to follow Jay on his journey towards reconciliation with his children and their mothers. But with no clear explanation, OWN decided not to air the series, and it remains a mystery what those 6 new episodes would have revealed. Survivor redefined reality TV, but Mark Burnett's first scripted sitcom didn't survive long enough to air. Commando Nanny was based on the real-life experience of reality TV producer Mark Burnett as a British ex-commando who, after struggling to find work in LA, charms his way into a nanny gig. Burnett is a reality TV pioneer. He's produced Shark Tank, The Apprentice, and most importantly, he has blessed us all with the greatest game ever made, Survivor. I'm literally watching Survivor right now as I write this. Hey, no peeking. In 2004, Time even named Burnett one of the most influential people in the world, and the WB wanted some of that sweet reality TV gold. So they asked Burnett to create a reality show for them, and he said, hey, I have an even better idea. Commando Nanny. The WB said, sure, let's do that, but we still want to circle back to that hit reality show idea afterwards, and the deal was made. But no military training could prepare anyone for the production nightmares that followed. Commando Nanny had a lot of first-timers on board. It was Burnett's first scripted series, and former pop star Rachel Sweet was making her show-running debut. Most of the cast, aside from veteran actor Gerald McRaney, were also new to TV. The problem started immediately after the pilot was filmed. First, they had to recast the actress playing the wife. Then the lead actor broke his foot, which delayed production and forced them to recast the role. Then Gerald McRaney had to have lung surgery, delaying production again. Then Rachel Sweet left as showrunner after it honestly didn't seem like she wanted to be there in the first place. Commando Nanny almost had more medevacs in 2 unaired episodes than Survivor has in 47 seasons. At this point, the WB just had to cancel the whole thing, and that hit reality show they wanted after never happened either. Burnett is still a TV legend though, and he should put me on Survivor. I'm just saying. Captain America was ready for action to be the next Marvel superhero to have their own cartoon series in the 90s. Developed by Saban for Fox Kids, the show would reveal that Steve Rogers was not Captain America's secret identity. Rogers was a cover provided by the Army, with his real name being Tommy Tompkins. Set in Europe during World War II, Cap would be facing off against the Red Skull with other nondescript enemy forces. Wikipedia explains that the show was pulled due to conflicts about whether mentions of Nazis as the hero's rivals were appropriate and Marvel's bankruptcy. It's true that in 1996, Marvel filed for bankruptcy after years of declining comic book and trading card sales before soaring to new record heights with the development of Marvel Studios years later. But that first reason about Nazis seems untrue. One of the writers for the animated series, Steve Englehart, provided details on his website. In true TV fashion, the enemy forces were not going to be called Nazis. Episode 7 would have the Red Skull destroying Stonehenge to rebuild it as a giant swastika. That's when I heard that we weren't doing swastikas either. So the no Nazis rule sounds like it was understood well before the show's cancellation. Englehart makes it pretty clear Marvel's monetary troubles got the series canceled. Mr. Dugan was a sitcom about a black former professional football star who was now a first-year congressman. It was originally titled Onward and Upward, with John Amos in the lead role, who left after filming the pilot because he wasn't happy with the storylines and comedic tone. The creators pivoted, recasting the role with a white actor, Peter Boyle. That's when the Hollywood branch of the NAACP reached out, encouraging them to keep Mr. Dugan as a black character, leading them to cast Clavin Little. Now that all that was ironed out, there was one more hurdle for Mr. Dugan. A week before the show's premiere, half of the Congressional Black Caucus were given a private viewing of the show. Let's see what they thought about it. One representative said it was an abomination. It stank, before storming out of the room. For Representative William Gray III, the show felt extra personal. Like Mr. Dugan, Gray was also a black congressman representing Philadelphia with a background in football. He worried that depicting a black congressman as a silly, incompetent man ruled by his staff would be disastrous. The president of the production company said they already had concerns about the show's direction, and the caucus's response confirmed their fears, so the show was cut from CBS's lineup. Clavin Little compared the issue to a basketball game. The Black Caucus is one team, the production company is another, and I'm the ball. He believed Mr. Dugan had the potential to bring serious issues to the screen through the vehicle of comedy, and that the character could have become the strongest black comedy character on television. Later that year, producer Norman Lear repurposed the concept of Mr. Dugan into another show, with a former professional football star becoming president of a fictional university. Hanging In would make it to air, but only last 4 episodes. If Women Ruled the World, I doubt they would have produced this show. When Women Rule the World was a reality series where 12 women were given their own society to run, with 12 men as their obedient manservants. Fox's head of reality TV at the time, Mike Darnell, boiled down the premise to women who felt they'd hit the glass ceiling in a male-dominated world, now calling the shots, with these macho and chauvinistic men serving their every command. Each week, the women would boot one of the men off the island, with the last man standing winning $250,000. The women, however, had no cash prize up for grabs. The women selected for the show all share a sense that despite how far women have come in society, men still have an unfair advantage, and perhaps need to be taught a lesson. And that lesson must be that one of the guys is now $250,000 richer and the women get nothing. Take that, patriarchy. Darnell teased, payback can be a bitch. Fox saw this program as the next step in the evolution of reality television, but that next step would never be taken. Scheduled for a 2008 release, the season came and went without a premiere. One of the contestants hinted at some behind-the-scenes drama between the production company and the network. 2 years later, Fox finally addressed its absence, saying it will never air because, quote, sometimes things sit on the shelf too long and get old. Sorry ladies, you heard the man. He said it's too late for a women-led society. Or is it? UK's Channel 4 liked the concept and created their own When Women Rule the World, which actually aired all 8 of its episodes. Just going off the UK adaptation here, if this was supposed to highlight the struggles of women, it missed the chance to say anything serious. All of it comes off so childish, it just sounds like older siblings bossing their younger brothers around in the backyard. Our little genius put kid geniuses to the test in the hopes of winning their family life-changing money. Hosted by Kevin Pollak, the show had kids ages 6 to 12 facing incredibly tough, multi-layered questions only experts could answer. If they got all 10 questions correct, they'd walk away with $500,000. The parents also played a crucial role in the game, deciding how far to push their little genius with each high-stakes question. Hot off the success of Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader, reality TV producer Mark Burnett was ready for another hit kid-based game show. And the show had quite the flair for the theatrics, like introducing the kid genius by slowly lowering them from a giant cylindrical chamber. But one thing the producers overlooked was that child prodigies love following rules. Just days before the scheduled premiere, Our Little Genius was shelved indefinitely. And it wasn't Fox making the call, but the creator of the show himself. Because Burnett had gotten word that some of the contestants may have been given some of the answers beforehand, a big no-no for game shows, and tattletaled on Our Little Genius. In the 1950s, there was a huge scandal having to do with quiz show producers fixing the outcome to their competitions, forcing Congress to amend a federal law, making it illegal for TV networks to deceive the public in quiz shows. Weeks before Our Little Genius's premiere date, the FCC received a letter from the parent of a child being recruited for the show, stating that a production member gave them answers to at least 4 questions. They told him that he has to know in music notation that the name for the 64th note is the hemi-demi semiquaver. I mean, who doesn't know about the old hemi-demi semi? When the parents ran that by the show's legal team, asking if that was even allowed, production took away the kid's spot on the show. It was also reported that if one of the kids on the show answered one of the first 4 questions wrong, they'd allow them to restart the game all over again with a new set of questions. With credible accusations floating around, Burnett seemed warranted in asking Fox to cancel the show. Not just to protect reputations, but probably to dodge legal issues too, and Fox obliged. Since the anti-cheating law for quiz shows has more to do with deceiving the public, and Our Little Genius never actually aired, the FCC never went through with the investigation. This is likely a big reason why the only pieces of the show that have been seen are a couple of short promo clips. Marvel Productions produced an animated series called The Young Astronauts, set to launch in 1986, following a 21st century family exploring the cosmos aboard the starship Courageous. The show was designed for entertainment and educational purposes as part of a larger effort by the Reagan administration to get kids excited about space exploration, with each episode explaining real science concepts. A non-profit council and for-profit company worked together to fund the initiative, timing the release of The Young Astronauts with the upcoming and highly anticipated NASA shuttle launches. Marvel even had plans for a companion comic series, and to build excitement, ads featuring the young astronauts hanging out with Captain America appeared in comic books. Some of you may have already connected the dots as to why it was canceled before 1 episode. The entire initiative was halted after the tragic Space Shuttle Challenger disaster in January 1986, with the nation grieving the lives lost to the failed shuttle launch and the overall mood shift surrounding space travel. Both the show and comic were canceled before ever being released to the public. Between Marvel Productions and Toei Animation, $1.2 million had already been invested into the project by then, so when it was scrapped, Marvel filed a lawsuit against the Young Astronaut Council to recover their losses, ultimately winning back close to $200,000 by 1990. To this day, the Young Astronauts remains unreleased, leaving behind only a single animation cell, a few press articles, and most recently, a full episode's dialogue found on a reel sold on eBay.
Some people can't take a joke.
In 1964, CBS's Bill and Martha was set to star 2 big Hollywood names, William Bendix and Martha Ray. The duo would play a butler and maid who inherit a mansion and try to run it as a rental property. Before its premiere, in an annual meeting with affiliates, CBS's president talked extensively about tinkering with success in order to stay in front of the competition with other networks, and specifically mentioned that plans for the Bill and Martha comedy series were abandoned for contractual reasons and didn't go into further detail. Only later would it be revealed that the reason for Bill and Martha's abrupt cancellation was the network's serious concern with William Bendix's declining health. His agent denied these health concerns, insisting that despite surgeries for ulcers and an appendectomy nearly a decade earlier, he was now in perfect health. Bendix sued CBS for $2.6 million, saying the unjustified cancellation and accusation of poor health hurt his career. The case was settled out of court for $25,000. A few months later, Bendix passed away from complications related to stomach cancer and pneumonia. Why would anyone want to live in a neighborhood full of bigots, racists, and homophobes? Ask the contestants of the highly controversial unaired reality show Welcome to the Neighborhood, that had 7 families of various ethnicities, races, and religions competing for a house in a suburban community. To win the house, the families were pitted against each other in challenges and judged by 3 conservative white families that lived in the neighborhood, one judge openly claiming that he would not tolerate a homosexual. As news about the show spread, it was
slammed from all sides. 1, for its normalization of intolerance, 2, because of its violation of the Fair Housing Act, and 3, because of fear from conservatives that they would come off looking biased. The producers say the goal was to see if a diverse family could be accepted into a white, conservative, upper-class Christian neighborhood. But why? Why is the approval of conservative white families necessary? ABC dropped the series before it aired due to the sensitivity of the subject matter. The judges did eventually award the house to the gay couple, which led one of the neighbors to put his house up for sale, directly citing the show and the gay couple moving in as the reasons why. Shocking. No controversies, no unexpected deaths. This show was canceled before its premiere for being just painfully unfunny. Based on the British sitcom The Gremlins, the Grubs are an underachieving blue-collar family from the fictional town of Hackville, Pennsylvania, with a son who dreams of actually making something of himself. Leading the cast was the youngest Michael Cera you'll ever see in his TV debut. Fox originally ordered 13 episodes of The Grubs, then cut it down to 8 for financial reasons. It was all set to premiere on November 3rd, 2002, until the critic reviews came in. The Grubs was voted worst new fall series by a poll of TV critics in Daily Variety. Tim Goodman of the San Francisco Chronicle didn't stop there, saying, "It's probably the worst show of the season, maybe several seasons." The first episode is on YouTube, and yeah, it isn't anything special.
The whole joke is that the family members are bumbling idiots, which gets old after about 2 minutes.
Michael Cera's character has the hots for his new teacher, and his PE coach is evil. You know the drill. But Michael Cera has a few moments of elevating the material higher than it deserves.
Mitchell, hi, I didn't know you lived here. I just rented the house next door. Really? Next door? Wow. So glad that lady died.
And after the show was canceled, Cera's performance was still enough to get him an audition for Arrested Development. At only 14 years old, he probably thought The Grubs would be his big break, and when it wasn't, he had doubts about Arrested Development even making it to premiere night either. Although Arrested Development didn't do great in the ratings, it's now one of the most beloved comedy series of all time, launching Cera's career and helping that kid from Hackville make something of himself after all. In 1976, NBC almost made history with a show ahead of its time, only to cancel it right before it aired. At the time, David Brenner was a legend of The Tonight Show, appearing over 150 times on the late-night talk show alongside Johnny Carson. His popularity was rising, and NBC executives saw sitcom potential in him. They teamed up with Welcome Back Kotter producer James Comack to create Snip, a half-hour comedy inspired by the 1975 film Shampoo. The comedy was about a hairdresser who follows his ex-wife to Cape Cod and gets a job at her beauty parlor. One of the main characters would be Michael, the openly gay boss of the salon, played by Walter Wanderman. In a 1976 article, Lee Winfrey wrote that Walter Wanderman believes the American television audience finally is ready to accept a homosexual character as a regular on a comedy series, so he will play such a character this fall. Comack received pushback from NBC about the Michael character, so they hired an advisor to make sure the Michael character doesn't behave in any ways that would offend anyone. And producers were so confident in the role that they were already talking to Wanderman about making a potential Michael spin-off down the road. As Snip prepared for its September 1976 premiere, NBC heavily promoted the show, and Brenner appeared on talk shows to generate buzz. 5 episodes were ready to roll, with 2 more already filmed when the last-minute cancellation hit the set. Lead actress Leslie Ann Warren told the LA Times, "One day mid-rehearsal, someone came in and said, 'Get your bags and get out.'" Despite having invested $150,000 per episode, NBC snipped Snip from their lineup before it ever aired. Brenner said NBC made up all kinds of excuses, but he believed the real reason they canceled the show was because they were afraid to have a gay on television. Although Snip never aired in the US, the 5 completed episodes were broadcast in Australia. Today, the only way to see the finished episodes is by visiting the Paley Center for Media in New York City. After botching the end of Game of Thrones, leaving the franchise in ruins, and pissing off basically the whole world, what was the next move for creators David Benioff and D.B. Wise to regain the approval of TV viewers? Developing a show about an America where slavery never ended. That was the premise behind Confederate, an alternate history drama planned for HBO, set in a timeline where the Confederates won the Civil War, leaving slavery intact in the South. When the show was announced, it didn't go over well. An online campaign kicked off during season 7 of Game of Thrones with the hashtag #NoConfederate trending #1 in the US on Twitter. Benioff and Wise tried to defend the concept, explaining their goal was to explore modern racial issues through a dystopian lens, with Wise calling American slavery the nation's original sin that still lingers today. But as Ta-Nehisi Coates of The Atlantic pointed out, African Americans do not need science fiction, or really any fiction, to tell them that this history is still with us. And in a time when white nationalists nationalists were marching through Charlottesville with torches and Confederate battle flags. Writer Roxane Gay, who saw the concept as slavery fan fiction, questioned who this show was even for. HBO responded to the backlash, asking viewers to reserve judgment until there is something to see. Unfortunately, guys, you were already way in the doghouse after Game of Thrones, and people weren't eager to give you the benefit of the doubt. But it wasn't really the controversy that canceled Confederate. In August 2019, David Benioff and DB Wise signed a new deal worth $200 million to develop new shows and films for Netflix, effectively ending their deal with HBO. And in January 2020, HBO officially confirmed Confederate was history. There's a reason you've probably never heard of the man who was supposed to be the first ever late night host. High-flying pianist Don Creesh Hornsby was making a name for himself with his bizarre 5-hour-long nightclub shows that involved dry ice, trapeze work, and a live donkey. Hornsby's signature move was playing the piano while suspended upside down from the ceiling. At just 26 years old, the Spokane Daily Chronicle wrote, "Gosh only knows what he'll think up when he's been around longer." Hornsby was quickly discovered by Bob Hope, who put him on his radio show, giving the rising comic even more attention. Meanwhile, NBC was looking to produce America's first late-night variety show, originally titled The Anchor Hawking Show. Hornsby tried out for the hosting gig, and things were really looking up. NBC signed him to a 5-year deal and had every intention to give him the show. Until on the day of his final audition, Don had to be rushed to the hospital and was placed in an iron lung for a rapid onset of polio. He would end up passing away on the same day he was planned to host his first episode. After Hornsby's sudden passing, NBC scrambled to find replacements. With the show named now Broadway Open House, celebrities like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis took turns hosting until the network landed on Jerry Lester as the show's permanent host. 15 months later, the structure of Broadway Open House would lead the way for The Tonight Show with Steve Allen to premiere in 1954 and has still been running to this day. We should just be holding our late night talk show hosts to the same standard as Don Hornsby. I need Jimmy Fallon to get some trapeze work into his opening monologues. One writer called this the worst idea for a TV show ever. Let's see if we all agree. In 2021, CBS planned to air The Activist, a reality competition hosted by Usher, Priyana Chopra, and Julianne Hough, with 6 activists competing to bring meaningful change to health, educational, and environmental causes. This is where things got controversial. The contestants would compete with each other, but not to see who can bring the most positive change to the world. The metric of success for this show was social media engagement. Eye roll emoji, am I right? We're in a time when performative activism is suspected with every company's social media post. So this cosplaying of well-meaning activism by the network was never really gonna fly. And it's completely discrediting the honest work of those contestants. An activist is not a social media manager. There's hardly any relation between the two. So to have all of this hinge on retweets is so irrelevant to the lives these activists are trying to help. It's like they tried to create a show equivalent to those Facebook posts that say 1 like equals 1 prayer. Even worse was this show's treatment of the activists they're claiming to support. Climate activist Clover Hogan was approached to be on the show, but she found the audition process so humiliating that she declined the offer. She shared that while discussing her life's work, the interviewer got irritated, calling her job too complicated for American viewers. But when she broke down in tears, that emotional vulnerability seemed to be exactly what the producers craved. Eventually, even the celebrity hosts publicly distanced themselves from the show. By then, CBS was facing backlash from all directions and announced that The Activist would be repurposed before airing, cutting out the competitive element, focusing instead on celebrating the activists' efforts and rewarding each a cash grant for their cause. But after all that, it's unknown if the primetime special ever even aired. We did it, everybody. We saved the world. The first reality show in Washington, D.C. was also the first reality show in Washington, D.C. to be canceled before 1 episode. Meet the Blonde Charity Mafia. This half-hour docuseries follows a group of influential 20-somethings in Washington, D.C. From charity events to society parties, these women host the hottest tickets in town. The show was made for the Lifetime Network, who then sold it to the CW, who then held onto it for a year before scrapping it for other shows they felt more confident in. It made it to air overseas, but was only available to watch in the States through illegal streams. I couldn't find much other than some promo clips, which include this very dramatic voiceover about the queen bee of the group, Catherine.
For Catherine, the giving is personal. Since childhood, she has been fighting a rare disease that could be fatal.
The could in here is doing a Herculean amount of heavy lifting. The disease is multiple endocrine neoplasia, and she said on Twitter, "Not sure who did the voiceover for #BlondeCharityMafia, but no, I'm not dying of a fatal disease." That's how desperate the show was for any drama at all, and that's not the only part of the show that's suspect. One of the 3 leads of the Blonde Charity Mafia is Sophie. Don't know if I have to point this out for my viewers here, but she is not blonde, and she was horrified when she heard 3 weeks into filming that the show is going to be called Blonde Charity Mafia, since she's actually brunette. In one of the loudest, most unhinged interviews I have ever seen, Sophie is asked, "Is the show real? It has to be scripted, right?" Followed by the interviewer saying Sophie is a slut.
I'm sorry, you're a bit of a slut.
If the show is anything like this interview, I need it, give it to me now. The making of this TV show was so wild, it stopped traffic. Country Style was set to bring country music to Australian TV in the 1960s. Australian country stars the Lagarde twins were on to produce the show with performances from country music stars including Marty Robbins. Robbins infamously declined most TV spots, but after a chance meeting with him at a bar, the Lagarde twins lured him to visit Sydney and perform on their show with the promise of great weather and beautiful women. Country Style was going to make history as Australia's first TV show filmed in color. But filming in color was so expensive, they could only afford to do it for the first episode, which has since gone missing. Despite its ambition, Country Style ran into some drama. During rehearsals one day, an argument about some wrong notes had band members storming out of the studio. The shouting match spilling into the streets of Sydney, causing such a commotion that traffic came to a standstill. A group of angry, shouting musicians clutching their instruments, exchanging insults with 2 red-faced men in cowboy suits. When the light turned green, not a single vehicle moved, no one tooted. No one tooted? Things really fell apart when the host, Digby Wolfe, began making demands for more money and luxuries, leading to the cancellation of the show before it aired. In this 2010 interview with the Lagarde brothers, they share an oral history of Country Style as they keep cutting each other off and getting frustrated over the other's long-winded stories, and it's hilarious.
Australian men. Well, Ben Chifley, the Prime Minister of Australia, or anybody of notoriety. But anyway, to cut through the chase, Ted, one of the greatest Australians ever lived. Well, let me put it here. Now, let me finish. Let me finish. The same, and we'd sing requests from the people. Now, let me take over. Hold on. Hey, let me take over for a while.
An episode of Country Style finally aired on Australia's country music channel 48 years later in 2011. When they heard the news, the Lagarde twins said how beautiful it is to be alive and never cease to dream. And just to connect some dots here, Country Style host Digby Wolfe co-created the way ahead of its time sketch comedy show Turn On, which we spoke about in a past Iceberg video because the show was infamously canceled halfway through its first episode. HGTV loves their twin hosts, and in 2014, they were ready to introduce their newest twins, David and Jason Benham, with their new greenlit show, Flip It Forward. The show concept is classic HGTV. The Benham brothers would use their sibling rivalry to help families turn fixer-uppers into their dream homes. After it was announced, though, Right Wing Watch had a few questions for HGTV. Like, when you gave these guys a show, did you know they were a part of the extreme far-right Benham family? Their dad, Flip Benham, no relation to Flip It Forward, was the leader of an anti-choice group, Operation Save America, known for harassing women at clinics, screaming that Jesus hates Muslims, and blaming 9/11 on abortion rights. Flip passed the torch of hate down to his offspring, who have compared gay marriage to Nazi Germany, have said Muslims are the enemy attacking America, and complaining that homosexuality is attacking the nation while the church sits silent and just builds big churches. The irony of a real estate guy complaining about building things. Once all this came to light, HGTV quickly tweeted a simple, "We're not going forward with this show anymore." The network still funded the completion of the 6 homes from the show, so the brothers could finish the project off camera, but of course, the conservative media was not happy about this. Pat Robertson, notoriously wrong about every doomsday prediction he has uttered, said, "Good grief, isn't there supposed to be some freedom? Aren't we supposed to have a First Amendment?" I'm happy to clarify that Robertson was actually right about this one. We do have a First Amendment, but it does not prevent home and garden television from canceling TV shows. Damn it, James Madison, why didn't he include that one in there? The Benham brothers fired back, claiming anyone who suggests that we hate homosexuals or people of faith is either misinformed or lying. Yeah, everyone, they're not saying they hate Muslims, they're saying Jesus hates Muslims. Now the twins have gone from flipping houses to still flipping out about gay marriage, forcing God to send us hurricanes. Benham brothers, if you're watching this, I gotta know, what sort of home insurance policy is available for gay hurricanes? Mail Order Family was a planned sitcom about a widowed father who orders a mail order bride from the Philippines to help raise his children, and it was based on a true story. The show's creator, Jackie Clark, known for her work on Superstore, lost her mother in first grade and was raised by a 25-year-old Filipina who her father literally ordered off of a catalog and who had no desire to be a mother. Greenlit by NBC in 2016, the network said they aimed to tell a heartfelt, sensitive story about Jackie's life experience. But when Jackie first shared her story a few years earlier on an episode of This American Life, nothing I heard was heartfelt. It was just sad. The father and the young Filipina woman did not get along. She seemed incredibly unhappy and isolated, and her dad ended up abandoning the family to move to the Philippines for another secret family he had over there. And Jackie's relationship with her Filipina stepmom ended with a years-long lawsuit for $200,000. So if the show was going to be based on true events, I'll just share what I believe to be obvious, which is that Mail Order Family is not sitcom material. Retelling this story as a lighthearted comedy was such a strange choice, especially since the issue of mail order brides is rooted in human trafficking, abuse, and exploitation. When NBC announced the show, it sent shockwaves through the American Filipino community. A change.org petition hit over 11,000 signatures in less than 2 days, with protests outside of NBC's headquarters organized in a Facebook group. The network responded to the backlash, saying that they planned to tell the story with care, but given the controversy, they would drop the project. So Mail Order Comedy was canceled just 2 days after it was announced. This show wanted to expose hate, but ended up bankrolling it. In December 2016, A&E announced Generation KKK, a docuseries profiling Ku Klux Klan leaders and some of their members looking to leave the hate group with the help of anti-hate extractors. I've never heard that job title before, and when I googled it, the only results were related to this exact show. As expected, reactions were all over the place. Some argued in favor of airing the show, saying that we can't sweep extremists under the rug and need to expose these dangerous views in order to squash them. Others argued in favor of canceling the show, with concerns that it would only amplify racist voices and normalize white supremacy. Addressing the backlash, A&E shared their intent is for the show to be a way to stand against hate, and were willing to make a few changes to reassure the doubters. They dropped the show name of Generation KKK for the much more spelled out Escaping the KKK, a documentary series exposing hate in America. In small font, it says, "We swear." A&E then partnered with civil rights group Color of Change to add segments featuring civil rights leaders to help provide context to the documentary, with a post-show town hall to discuss how to end hate in America. Color of Change agreed to do all of this on the one condition that none of the KKK members in the docuseries were paid for their involvement. A&E promised them no payments were made. After further review, A&E learned that the third-party producers in charge of the series did actually make cash payments to some KKK participants. That awkward moment when you wanted to stand against hate but accidentally helped fund it. In an investigation by Variety, participants were paid up to $600 a day, and sources said that the production team provided pre-scripted fictional story scenarios like a cross-burning ceremony, even supplying the KKK with materials for burning wood crosses and swastikas. Some participants even claim that the producers would tell them during interviews to use the N-word. Then again, this is a hate group, who Variety even mentions is not reliable truth tellers, but the cash payments part was confirmed by A&E themselves. Color of Change obviously withdrew their support for the show after this news broke, and just 1 day after renaming the series, A&E couldn't escape this PR nightmare and canceled Escaping the KKK entirely. Good Grief was a reality show for Lifetime following the owners of a funeral home in Fort Worth, Texas. The charismatic duo of Dondre and Derek, better known as the Undertaker twins, along with Dondre's wife Rachel, ran the Johnson family mortuary, and Lifetime pitched it as a heartwarming, family-centered show bringing life to the business of death. The show was scheduled to premiere in August 2014. But then the bodies were found. In July 2014, their license was about to expire, and the Johnsons were in the process of getting evicted for not paying rent, so the building owner called the police. When detectives arrived, they could smell the odor of decaying flesh from the parking lot. When they entered, they found what looked like 2 mummified bodies, one infested with insects in a casket, another wrapped in a sheet on a coffee table. The remains of 2 infants were found to be there for over a year. One was liquefied in a plastic bin on the floor. The investigator said he had never seen infant bodies in the state in which they were found. Some of the bodies had been decomposing in the funeral home for over a year. Later that day, Dondre Johnson addressed the media in front of his funeral home, brushing off the scandal by saying, "In a few days from now, we'll be on a reality show, so I want all this media." But Lifetime was not amused. They quickly pulled the plug on Good Grief, their VP releasing a statement confirming the show has not and will not air, calling the allegations against the Johnsons deeply troubling. Then reports surfaced that families who used the mortuary received ashes that did not belong to their deceased loved ones. Dondre pled guilty to 9 counts of abuse of a corpse and was sentenced to 2 years in jail and fined $20,000. His defense team pinned the blame on his wife Rachel, saying she was in charge of the funeral home. Rachel was convicted on similar charges as well as for unrelated food stamp fraud. In a 2016 interview, Dondre mostly blamed his staff, who were all friends and family he had hired. By 2018, he was back on Instagram, casually posting pictures of himself looking, quote, casket sharp. Apple TV is a hit now, but it wasn't without a rocky start. Before the streaming service officially launched, Apple was looking to create a library of family-friendly original content. They struck gold with season 1 of Ted Lasso, which perfectly fit the bill. One show that did not, as you could probably guess by the name, was Bastards. You tell me how family-friendly this sounds. Bastards follows 2 elderly Vietnam veterans and best friends who find their monotonous lives upended when a woman they both loved 50 years ago is killed in a car accident. Their lifelong regrets and secrets collide with their resentment of today's self-absorbed millennials, and the duo then go on a shooting spree. Oh yeah, kids, gather around the television for a cozy night of watching how much boomers irrationally hate you. Back in 2015, HBO was initially developing this adaptation of the Israeli series Nevelot, with Adam Sandler's Happy Madison Productions set to make its dramatic debut. That fell through, but a few years later, Apple picked up the project after a pricey bidding war. With Richard Gere set to star, Homeland's Howard Gordon and Law & Order SVU's Warren Light collaborated on 2 scripts for Bastards, which is when Apple finally became concerned with the tone of the show. Apple, on one hand, envisioned Bastards to be focused on friendship. Gordon envisioned the show to be dark and focused on 2 angry old men getting revenge on all of those dang kids on their cell phones causing a ruckus. So Bastards was canceled before any of the 8 episodes aired, and instead, we got 2 more seasons of Ted Lasso, which completely bastardized the original season and became unwatchable. Don't even at me about this, dude. Season 2 and 3 were so bad, and there is no way around this fact. Hit me with the next show. I'm ready to move on. In 2019, Channel 4 created The Surgery, with people asking a jury for the cosmetic surgery of their dreams. The candidates would at times even be asked to take their clothes off to plead their case to the panel of judges. One executive producer described the show as a totally new way of doing peer-to-peer advice, saying that contestants would either get the surgery they wanted or gain confidence from the public ruling that they didn't need any work at all. Yeah, that's how body dysphoria works. The show's goal seemed to be to reduce the stigma around the conversation of plastic surgery, but this conversation quickly spun out of their control before the show made it to television. If any of this sounds familiar, in another Iceberg video, we discussed The Swan from 15 years prior, with self-proclaimed ugly ducklings undergoing extreme physical makeovers, way more extreme than the women were asking for, to the point where one contestant cried to producers that she wanted her face back. When The Surgery was announced, many online were appalled and frustrated, because we've been here before. We've seen the effects of these kinds of shows on its contestants and its young, impressionable viewers. One doctor went on Twitter to say he was originally cast on the show, but declined the offer once he understood the full premise. The British Association of Aesthetic Plastic Surgeons also condemned the show, calling the format reckless and saying that trivializing this decision for shock value entertainment sends a dangerous and misleading message. The Surgery's host, Caroline Flack, had been the face of the hugely popular Love Island for years, a show that has had its own fair share of body image controversy. Flack defended the show on Twitter, praising the participants for their strength and reiterating that life was about individual choice. But the situation went from bad to worse when Flack was arrested for assaulting her boyfriend. Soon after being charged, Flack stepped down from hosting Love Island, and not long after that, Channel 4 said they had no plans to air The Surgery. A month and a half later, in February 2020, Flack took her own life, making her the 3rd person associated with Love Island to die by suicide, with mental health struggles and negative media coverage being direct contributing factors. Ev and Ocho was going to be a VH1 reality show starring NFL wide receiver Chad Ochocinco Johnson and his then wife, Evelyn Lozada. Ev starred in 4 seasons of Basketball Wives, and Chad Johnson was a 6-time Pro Bowl receiver, so this power couple seemed like a perfect fit for a reality show to follow them going through the stresses of coordinating their dream wedding. This was also going to be Chad's first season playing for the Miami Dolphins, fins up baby, and with HBO's Hard Knocks following the team that year, a lot of eyes were on his personal and professional life. Things took a turn 3 weeks before Ev and Ocho's premiere, and 41 days after their wedding, when Evelyn and Chad were out to dinner in Miami, Ev confronted him about a receipt she found for condoms. The argument escalated when they got home, and Chad reportedly headbutted his wife. She was treated at the hospital for a gash on her forehead that required 8 stitches, and Chad was arrested on a domestic violence charge. The next day, Dolphins head coach Joe Philbin informed Chad that he was being released from the team, an uncomfortable meeting that aired on the next episode of Hard Knocks. The day after that, VH1 announced that due to unfortunate events over the weekend and the seriousness of the allegations, they had no plans to air Ev and Ocho. And the day after that, Evelyn filed for divorce. Johnson received a year of probation, and a warrant for his arrest was issued the following summer after failing to meet with his probation officer for 3 consecutive months. He avoided jail time after a plea deal until the judge rejected that deal for disrespecting the court after Johnson slapped his attorney on the butt. He served a week of his 30-day sentence. And the Dolphins have not won a playoff game in 23 seasons. There's a few shows I didn't get to in time to add in this video, but I'm still gonna cover them on TikTok, so if you wanna follow along there, I'll add my link in the description. And if you wanna see more videos from me here on YouTube, might I suggest this video where we talk about a bunch of commercials that should not exist. And while you consider clicking that, I just wanna say thank you for watching. If you liked this, I hope you subscribe, and thank you to my YouTube members for helping support my channel. I'll see you in the other video. Let's do this again sometime.